Hello and welcome to yet another LinkedIn Live with myself, Nicholas Wern. And according to this banner, I'm a digital twin specialist. And today we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk about, and maybe I get some comments in here as well, about, why IoT, Internet of Things, is dead on arrival. And maybe it doesn't even arrive. And also why, IoT is dead and long live IoT. So just to recap, so Internet of Things is, that's how I sort of got into this business when I met a founder of a company. I was in Finland. He could show me on his phone that he could see whenever someone has opened up the refrigerator, turn on and off the lines at his house back in Iceland. So this was about 6 to 7 years ago. And because, I had the ambition to solve all the problems in the world and work in a global context, buildings are pretty interesting. But the problem that I realized pretty quickly is that the way that data gets represented from different sensors, from different domains, is usually in a dashboard. And those dashboards are very native to that domain. So that, if someone wants to show something, let's say from a building, from energy side, or from the, again, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, or even the lighting aspects, or whatever that was, it was hard for anyone else outside of that domain to understand it, even though it was connected, right? Even though, it was connected to a dashboard or to an IoT platform. So if you go back like 5 to 6 years, the hype that we're seeing right now with both the metaverse as well as digital twins, that was the IoT hype, right? And during these 5 to 6 years, we've encountered something that's been a problem for quite some time, which is 1,000 cuts problem. Because if you let's take a building, for instance, you have a lot of different systems. And even if they get connected, they usually get connected with their own domain. So you're looking at different applications, possibly coming from different vendors. So you get into a SaaS problem. Software as a service, is really, really good. And even if these applications, from a salespeople perspective, say like, our platform is amazing, we can connect all your lighting into a dashboard. And if you want to do integrations with other systems, that is super easy because we have open APIs. But again, that doesn't necessarily matter. And if you have the compound effect, if you have the compound effect of getting, data from different sensors, again, into different applications. And let's say you want to work with a data scientist, right? Because nowadays, especially if you're in the US or, places where they have BACnet, so BACnet is the world's largest building automation um, open standard. Sometimes it's too open, but it's a really, really good one. I actually haven't talked about BACnet for quite some time, so I get happy all the time when I talk about BACnet because it's an amazing, open standard, and it just brings, stuff together from that environment. And even if someone says like BACnet is dead, you can have open APIs, RESTful APIs, OAuth, authentication, all this kind of stuff. But it still becomes the problem that if you take a data scientist that is not necessarily native to the building environment, it's always, what does this mean, right? What are these, jargon, the acronyms, how is this data tagged coming out of these sensors? And most of all, where is it coming from, right? Where in the building, is this coming from? So you look at an Excel sheet and you might get, temperature readings or occupancy or whatever that is. But if you don't have access to the floor plans, which might not necessarily, be up to date anyway, it's, virtually impossible to understand, where is it coming from and derive any value from it. And especially if you're going to work with from a data scientist perspective, because you don't necessarily have, an understanding what smart buildings mean. And a lot of these, beginnings of a data scientist that, if you start a new project, you'd spend 3 months or a couple of months learning about, that topic. You do a lot of studying and, you read research papers, which again, I find, of course it's fun to learn new stuff, but if you've been working with, let's say, a specific building or buildings in general for, let's say, 20 years, you're probably going to know much, much, much more about both the building industry and especially about that specific building than anyone else can learn, in 3 months that haven't had, been educated to work with buildings, right? So there's a knowledge transfer, that it's really important that it's solved right. And with today's processes, the methods, as well as the people, it doesn't really work. So why IoT is dead on arrival is because if you go back to the data to impact loop, which I've talked about quite a lot, we see that data needs to be turned into information. It needs to be turned from information into insight, and from insight into action, and action into impact. But usually it might get turned into, well, data to information, but that's where it stops, right? Because the information cannot be translated outside of these dashboards. If you put 10 experts in a room for that specific building that is now fragmented, and they show up at the meeting with their own tools, the energy tools, the mechanical stuff, the lighting, all these kind of things, it's not just that the programs or the applications themselves, because they're probably pretty legacy, they don't necessarily have open APIs, or maybe they do, but the data is not tagged, it's not structured or standardized correctly, so it's really, really hard to integrate them with each other. But also the people that in this room, if you don't have the building, the actual building that you want to know more about, that you want to make more efficiency with energy maintenance aspects, or occupancy, or maybe find new business models, if they can't understand what the other ones are saying, you know it's impossible to get to this, to actually deliver any kind of impact or any insight for that matter, right? So that's why IoT, it doesn't necessarily arrive, and the stakeholders, the decision makers, you can't necessarily show them again these 10 different applications or 20 different applications that they you know have to work with from a specific building. And this is the same everywhere. I think about it all the time. When you take just a picture of anything, I have a picture here of it's my cemetery outside, and if I take a picture, you see trees, of course you see a cemetery, you see a tram stop out here. If I get all of this stuff connected, everyone is interested in different aspects of it. And for me, having now worked with digital twins for quite some time, reality is where everyone is, right? So now in the I'm in charge of, again, I said this before in during the LinkedIn Live podcast, is that the technical, sorry, I'm getting a lot of pop-ups here. The technical asset manager just, said it, as simply as possible. Right now, we're using multiple interfaces. I'm using different applications to understand what goes on in the building. And I need to go into new systems, I need to learn a lot of different things. And now we're, the we need to learn new stuff all the time. And it's really, really hard because it just gets a fragmented overview without getting the insights and needing to the action that we need. And especially when we're talking to the actual users, I don't have a good tool to communicate with them. I can't really show them, what I mean. They can definitely not, show me what I need to see. So that's why, digital twins, or like again, a virtual representation of that building that they're actually, working with. If they have that, that leads to one interface where for collaboration among people. So again, just to iterate about digital twins and the relationship to IoT is IoT is again like Internet of Things. And digital twins is a virtual visual representation, let's say a 3D model or something, but combined with real-time data at specific frequencies from that reality. So again, if you have an up-to-date version of reality, that means that you can again be on my balcony and I can open and close valves here in the schools. I can, we're right now, programming self-learning buildings and doing AI machine learning work to actually get that done automated. But it just shows that I can improve that reality, knowing what has happened, what is happening, and what will happen. And I just look at one interface and I can talk to the users, I can talk to the plumbers, the electricians, the HVAC people, the energy specialists, even the data scientists, and just explain what I mean, because it's a holistic interface that we all have been using since more or less the day we were born. And the interface that I'm talking about is, of course, reality itself. So IoT, so like Internet of Things, getting that connected is, of course, a must, right? You have to have, some understanding of what has been happening and what is happening in order to predict what will happen. But in order to translate that into, so that it makes sense, is if you don't have digital twins, if you're just stuck with dashboards, it might end up getting into insights from one domain. But as most of us know, you have to understand the context is everything. And that context today comes from other systems, which doesn't necessarily have structured data, especially if you want to bring in data from different domains, because even in one domain, it's not tagged, it's not structured. if you combine data from different systems or from different time periods, it's very, very different how they're structured. So I'm going to look at the comments now, but that's sort of like the gist of it, right? So impact of things fail to get delivered because we can't translate knowledge across both technical domains as well as people domains. So the solution is, of course, because I'm a digital twin specialist, is digital twins done right. So Guy Parkinson, fantastic. Thanks for commenting. Says it's too much information from the built environment. Some of the tools can, with sensor engineering, generate a knowledge base. So exactly. I mean, it's too much. It's too much data, too much information, possibly, but it's too much data and information that is stuck in different applications, and you have to have a specific knowledge on how to extract value from those tools. And it's again, we're doing another initiative for the built environment, and now we got a concert over here, so maybe you can hear what I'm saying. I'm going to try to speak up. um, we just accept the status quo in the built environment, right? And the comment here was that okay, we have to show up at the real estate office. We have to teach them how to do this. Then they have to buy something, and then they have to spend like 1 to 2 weeks learning this program. And I just said to the guy that I was talking to, well, is that the same with Netflix, right? Do someone come over to your house before you want to purchase Netflix, and they ask you about your history, what you like in movies, all this kind of stuff. And then you purchase it, and then you have to pay for upgrades. You have to pay for all this kind of stuff. Someone needs to visit you once or twice a year just to figure out if it's correct, if it's working okay. And then you need to spend 1 week, getting training in how to use Netflix and how to search for movies. Obviously, buildings are a little bit more complicated, but it doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be that complicated that we're making it. And one of the fundamental insights, just as an anecdote, a lot of this stuff is anecdotal actually, but is that, Nicholas, you're the first one that has told me that I can use technology to actually solve a problem, right? And I mean, that's what we need to do. We need to use technology not to, lock people up or lock people in and just, push on updates forever. What I want to do is just, solve one problem forever, right? And basically solve all the problems. But anyway, so I definitely agree. So Glenn is saying, I'm pretty sure the media pundits replaced IoT jargon with Metaverse Internet 3. Yes, definitely. And I think, the Metaverse, the biggest open secret there is that if you tie it to reality, so it's just like making it a collaborative environment of something that exists in reality, that is really, really cool, right? And if you can tie it with real-time data, you're basically collaborating together on something where you get an up-to-date version of reality. So I don't say it's replaced, but it's definitely an addition to IoT, with the metaverse, Web3, and all the other stuff. And like I said before, with the Gartner hype cycle, all of the hype that exists, which includes, what I just said, and blockchain and 5G, 6G, and everything in between, most of the stuff is possible today, but it's just knowing what tool, what technology to use at what time in the right order. And an analogy that we did today or earlier was that if you look at MasterChef, right? I love that show, MasterChef Professionals, especially that one, because it just shows they have tried and failed a lot of different times, so they know what works. So that's what I've been doing the last 7 years, like reality research. Just try to understand what problems are happening in industries and how do we actually solve them. What tools do we need to use? All this kind of stuff, because the ingredients are here. And if you just would put ingredients, again, like going to the cooking analogy, if you just put the right ingredients, in front of somewhere, they don't have a recipe, what are they going to do about it, right? So that's sort of like the hype cycle. But then again, also, if you have put, the right ingredients together and you give them the recipe to basically anyone, right? It doesn't make them professional, right? Even if spell out the steps and all this kind of stuff, it's not that easy for the most part to do this complicated thing. So I'm all about creating these recipes, but I also realize that some of this stuff is hard. It's not that easy. Anyway, so tagging using in the stand is really laborious. I have a site with 86,000 points on at the moment. That's from Guy Parkinson. Yes, definitely. I'm working right now with a company where we know we want to create at the speed of thought using taxonomies and ontologies and human dialogue combined with digital twins so that, we see something, we ask the digital twin and it rearranges itself and, get, legacy code in and to automatically tag, map data from legacy APIs into, what's his name? Brian has been working with the ontology alignment project because a lot of the work in getting buildings, from what they've been, we're talking about existing buildings now, to where they need to be, is difficult. It's complicated. A laborious process is an understatement. It's not really easy. In terms of back in the territories, which is again like the world's largest building automation standard, it's easier if you're looking at it from a building automation perspective. But that again, we're not talking about lighting, are we? We're not talking about the whole building. We're talking about a subset. And whenever we want to talk about the whole building, which again, we don't necessarily do that, and the whole building from a life cycle perspective, so that anyone, whether you're an architect or you are, energy specialist or demolition or reusage, whatever that is, you should be able to have an interface where you can natively talk, to someone else during the whole life cycle or the user and for them to understand what you mean. And for me, the only tool that I've found is to be specific, have a virtual model of the said building that you're talking about, and having integrated data from different aspects into something that makes sense where you can explain these kind of things. And then we go to Naresh. IoT is nothing but its only data things used in different ways, whether it's metaverse, mixed reality, VR, AR, digital twins. I disagree possibly completely. So IoT on its own, it's again, Internet of Things. It's just getting connected. If you know how you visualize that data, how you represent that data, and also, digging behind, the scenes, again, how is that data structured, how it's tagged is really, really important. And, how it's displayed, that's, it's just, how do we visualize this data? How do we collaborate around it? So mixed reality, VR, AR, digital twins, and the metaverse, they are not the same. They're definitely complementary. Sometimes they are, can work together. Sometimes, one used first, sometimes one used later. So I think like it's mostly about, again, sorry, how they're different, why they're different, and how they can work together. So it's not, only data of things used in different ways. If I possibly understood you correctly, I'd love to talk about this more, obviously. So then we have a comment from Michael Zambakidis. IoT is essentially monitoring analysis with predictive analytics. I think again, IoT in its purest form is basically nothing. It's again, connecting stuff, and then whatever comes after it, as in analytics, visualization, all this kind of stuff, is what happens later. Actionable data at that. It depends how to make it actionable. And again, like it's the same. If you ask whatever, if there even exist IoT experts, if you ask 10 IoT experts, define IoT, they probably are going to have a different story. So Michael, your story is great. I believe that we can dissect that a little bit and make it easier to say something is over here, something's over here. So you're saying that it's not difficult at all. A single pane of glass to monitor, analyze, and predict whatever it is from energy resources, water leaks, etc. Okay, so you're just saying that you're, yeah, okay, you're just promoting yourself. Fantastic, Michael, thanks for commenting. So again, if anyone wants to solve everything, just talk to Michael. They've managed to solve a lot of it. It might be true, right? Because if you know what you're doing, Michael might know exactly what he's doing in his team. It's not that difficult, right? But it's again, just pulling in data from different aspects, and even pulling that into a master dashboard. Yeah, that's super easy, right? But it's when you want to deliver impact from that data from a lot of different domains, and especially work with machine learning, AI, and as well as different people. That's when it starts to get a little bit tricky. Pulling data in from different places, super easy peasy. Integrating stuff, also easy. Making it interoperable for again, any system, anytime, not locking people in to specific vendors, tools, or consultants that claim that they can do everything. That is a little bit trickier, right? Because most of the companies today, they want to make money, and the way that they've been making money is to make it hard for people to choose, making it hard for people to change, making it hard for people to derive value from the data if they're not using their own tools. right? So what I'm talking about here is just to make it, so that we solve problems once and we don't have to solve them ever again or even pay for them that much, but to make it interoperable, scalable, robust, and reliable. Anyone can integrate anything. That's not a problem. Anyone can sell a product that does everything for everyone forever, but then it usually comes with a big price, and you can never get out of it. Anyway, so here we have like the open API question. So that's again like that's a I absolutely am allergic both to chili as well as seeing that open APIs are really the savior for everything. That means that you haven't really worked with data at depth. You haven't just necessarily worked with data scientists, or trying to get data from different sensors, trying to get different data from different domains, not just talking about energy, not just talking about building side, but everything around the building, weather data, satellite data, getting all this stuff together, that requires an understanding of how the data is structured, how it's tagged, because it's really difficult. So everyone that says open APIs go, they should probably dig a little bit deeper, understand, and you should always ask okay, what kind of standards are you using? Are what kind of taxonomies and ontologies are you using this for? And if we want to dig deeper, again, how do you structure the data? So just having something that you're structured is good. Having a reputable standard within a domain to point to that everyone is using. Of course, in the building space we have Haystack, we have Brick Schema, a Real Estate Core, these kind of things. But that also exists in in every other industry. So this is where it becomes a little bit challenging. So again, Michael, I love that you're commenting. It drives definitely engagement, but selling your stuff in someone else's something is not really optimal. So if you have any comments or questions, and not just blurting out this stuff that doesn't necessarily make sense with open APIs either, feel free to do that. Adam Kimball, my take on the IoT versus digital twin is this: IoT is more concerned with bespoke data, where the edge is operating in a closed world. Yes, and that's sort of how it should be until, because you want to have control, at least in a building environment, you want to go with local control first, right? It's a lofty term for letting equipment data share data in real enough time. The twins are a vastly different affair, where the twin is providing a conceptual rendering of something to a human, not just to a human, but also to other technologies, where again, like the capabilities of the digital twin differ quite a lot. So the semantics data are essential because most things where they're twin are complex. Yes, if you twin something that exists in reality, it's usually packed with data as well as people from multiple domains that need to come together. So it's not just the semantic interoperability. We're talking about again the technical interoperability, which is again, how open is it? How do you push data out? Semantic is more about the meaning of data, where it gets challenging when you combine data from different areas. And the goal is exactly, Adam, right? Why are we doing this? So sometimes I argue, like, maybe you want to build the business case first, but at the same time, once you, again, just have like a decide on a where, sorry, scratching my leg. If you decide on a where and you say, okay, where in the world are we doing stuff, right? And then you identify the people and you just get them together and say, like, hey, what is your problem in this part of reality? They can just talk about it. It doesn't necessarily have to have real-time data yet. It could just be deciding on a product, a building, a process, whatever that is, and identifying different people that engage from multiple domains in that side. Then you can start a discussion, and then you can say, okay, well, this takes a lot of time, and then someone say, okay, how much does it actually cost to do this? Well, it costs this much. Wow, this is a problem that we need to look into, right? So just having again the digital twin first is not necessarily the key, but at the same time, having a digital twin will definitely open up for discussion. So I think like one of the big things here in how to deliver value from IoT, so that it's not dead on arrival, that you actually can deliver the impact, is to get the people together, and you should deliver value within the first 3 weeks, or even the first week, if you do it correctly. And then we'll look at Robert Cross. And again, thank you so much, Adam. Fantastic, ending there as well. Talking about the why, right? Why are we doing this? Robert Cross, data at scale is invaluable. It's a misnomer that all key personnel interacting with an interface will understand how to do so or have the patience now it's cool to realize. I don't think so. I think again, everyone is used to navigating reality. I mean, you walk across the city, and you engage in multiple domains, even though you know about it or not. So if you use digital twins correctly, uh, you can have all the key personnel interacting with that environment, whether that be, again, from a school perspective, a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old, a district heating expert, AI person. If you can show what you're doing and explain this in a way that makes sense, this gets cold over here, do it like this, right? If these algorithms, the random forest or decision trees or regression stuff, leads to what's call it, a cold climate over here, that means that you're gonna get cold. If you show that in a Jupyter notebook, yeah, probably the data scientist doesn't necessarily know the impact this will deliver on the building. But if you show it, across a digital twin, that is a virtual representation of the said reality fed with real-time data. Yeah, of course you can explain it to basically anyone, right? So I think that the misnomer here is to think that we can't do this, right? Is to think that we have to make things complex, that we have to, be stuck in the world of data dark ages, and we can't really reach like the information renaissance that we have at hand. And a lot of the things that I've heard, said, with the last couple of years is that, Nicholas, what you're talking about, it sounds like sci-fi. Again, this augmented reality, metaverse, and whatever, all this kind of stuff. But in 10 years, this is, the sci-fi of right now will be, the smartphones of what we have today. So I think in order to reach the future in one piece, we need to have more silence. We need to have, sci-fi. We need to use sci-fi. Because that's one, how we can interact in the future, and we need to do things, in different way that we've done before, in better ways, right? So Michael, okay, Michael, again, you're just stating what you're doing, uh, and you're not providing any value whatsoever really to this comment section, just by you're just talking about your own stuff, which is fine. It's again price engagement, hopefully, and I would love to have a, maybe you can be on this talk the next time, and we can actually have a little bit of a discussion. That would be fantastic. So Damien, hey Nicholas, yes, digital twins are definitely really valuable when it comes to delivering impact, delivering understanding at scale across different domains. There's nothing like it, because again, we're just modeling reality. So with that said, be fearful of the ones that says that it's super easy, because it's not. It's usually it's not. And even though digital twins is a great and powerful tool, we still have the real world, to interact with, right? So companies have different processes. They have different people that are resistant to change. They have existing systems where it's not necessarily easy to get data out of, and even sometimes you don't necessarily need to get data out of it, but someone in the organization decides that we need to get data out of this system. So the hierarchies, the people, the culture, the systems, and as well as the processes of organizations, of course, are protecting the past and not necessarily have the right skills always to reach a glorious future ahead of us. And there are fantastic tools out there. And again, if you need any help in evaluating these tools, or again, how to get from creating value in a couple of weeks and just going from there, just let me know. And you know we're working on both global digital twins, where we can basically subscribe to any part of the world. I'm personally in charge of a couple of projects where we do self-learning digital twins, where we try to solve all the problems once and for all, using haystack tagging, using digital twins, machine learning, where we can go into any kind of facility, anywhere on the planet, obviously, and just put out sensors for them to understand what has happened, what will happen, and what is happening, and display that through a digital twin. So sometimes, if you know what you're doing, of course, everything is easy if you know what you're doing. But even if you know what you're doing, it doesn't necessarily mean that anyone else know what they're doing. And it's a complex world. Everyone that says something else, it's not really this. It's not really that easy. But there is a way. If there's a way, if there's a will, there's a way. And now, we're coming up to 30 minutes. But thank you so much for all the different comments. And if you want to know anything more about IoT or digital twinning, I'm here. So feel free to reach out. Thank you so much for engaging in this LinkedIn Live, and see you the next time. Cheers. Bye bye.